That spot may not have made a whole lot of sense to a lot of people, but it made a whole lot of sense to us here, because when we came out with that promo series, Pictures in the Sky, which was so popular and beautiful to look at, and people loved it around the city, Al kept saying, what does this mean, Pictures in the Sky? I don't understand this. What is this? And he drove the promotion department here, and they did these beautiful spots, crazy, because he kept saying, it makes no sense to me. So that's why they did that spot where they had him saying, pizza's in the sky, and then that's why he went, oh, that makes sense.
Every now and then they put one in the 6 o'clock news. They write, we come back on a transition to weather or sports. Al, what does that mean? Can you explain that to our audience? What does that mean, Al? Good.
That drove him crazy. Well, we're now joined by 2 other members of our Eyewitness News family. A newer member, Kelly Lynn, who just joined us, and an older member.
You very older member? Very old.
Yes.
I knew she was
a
going to do.
distinguished member.
Thank you.
Mr. Gelfman has come here to join us with some of their thoughts on their memories as well.
Well, you know, I didn't have much time to spend with Al. I've only been here about 8 months, but he did make me feel so special and so warm. And he made you feel important. I don't have nearly as much experience as many other people here, but he did make me feel like I brought something to the table. And there was a sincerity about him that I really appreciated. When you're new to a place, the first thing you want to do is just get comfortable and get it over with as quickly as possible. And he just made my life so much simpler. I looked forward to being with him, to doing Health Watch with him on the 6 o'clock. And I would even check the rundown before the show to see, are they putting me with Al? Because I knew I'd have lots of great laughs and that I'd go home with a smile on my face.
Yeah,
so,
that's for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, you know, I remember when you walk in to this building, when you're driving into the parking lot, I think you mentioned it the other night when Al used to drive in, it was that, you know, hello, Denise, hello, Dick, that booming in the smile. It was always with a smile. He always had that look on his face that, you know, he knew he could take a zinger too when you'd give him one back, like when we'd fight constantly on Friday nights over who would pay for dinner. You know, it was always, Dick, you having dinner with us? Yeah, Al, you have any money? No, Dick, that's not the question. You know? But, so what we decided to do was take a little bit of a look back over the last umpteen years, going back 20-some years, at some of the humor of Al, because he had it, and it was really a pleasure putting this piece together, because you got to see that humor, that style, the class that was Al Sanders. Enjoy this with us.
There is little humor in most of the news that comes our way every day.
3 more suspects have been arrested in the World Trade Center bombing.
And no one knew that better than the man who for 23 years brought Baltimore most of its news. So when there was a chance to change the pace, to let the viewer sit back and maybe smile for a moment or two, Al was ready to deliver.
So we have an iffy situation, as these storms always are, as they move up the Atlantic coast. We'll know more tomorrow by noon, and tomorrow morning, of course, also.
Well, why don't we go stock up?
That's a good idea.
I think that's
I don't think it's
always
necessary,
a good
but
idea.
if you'd like to, it's up to you.
It's never necessary, but we do it anyway. Don't we have an excuse?
Often it was simply his deadpan expression and Jack Benny-like delivery that pulled it all off. Like the time Bob Turk finished a tip about composting.
Everyone should have a compost pile. I'm just going to finish this banana right here. You can put the eggshell,
wait a minute, that's
coffee
garbage?
grounds,
That's a
coffee
prop.
grounds.
It's just a prop, Robert.
No,
Oh, it's garbage. It was garbage.
not garbage. It's just my lunch. See you later.
That's why his compost pile is that small. You see, he keeps going out there eating it.
Where are you going?
Eat my lunch.
Well, goodbye.
Al had far too much class to laugh at others, but found no problem laughing at himself.
Getting a reflection? Let me...
Well, all right, now you can eat those.
What are you doing? Night for
Is
you. It's
Captain
just
Chesapeake still working? I can go get his job next.
He wasn't at all comfortable with praise like the embarrassingly endless accolades from viewers on his 20th anniversary newscast. So he turned that, too, into a chance to smile.
Stop down and see me and you get a free steak.
All right.
Oh, bless his heart. Bless his. Thank you. If you don't mind, though, now, can we pause for a moment in honor of my career? What's left of it.
And nothing made Al smile more than children, whether talking to them in the classroom or about them with Mom.
Can I ask when I can come over and bring the footballs for the Twins? I mean, they're going to help the Baltimore Buccaneers, I guess, go to the Super Bowl.
I'm hoping they'll play football, actually.
You will tell me, though, right?
Yes, I will tell you, Al. I'll invite you over to my house, and you can do some rocking yourself.
All right.
So when you remember Al, remember this. He was a man who knew that even on days like this, there was a place for a little humor to ease your pain.
Well,
He did like to laugh.
yeah, like to laugh. It was instinctive. He would get mad at me for saying this, but gosh, it's the truth, and I'm going to say it. He was an absolute natural-born performer. And had he not decided to be in the news business, which was the more serious side of him, he easily could have been in the entertainment business. He got so furious at me if I ever called our newscast a show. It was a big issue with him. It was not a show. It was a broadcast. And he'd yell at me every time I did it, accidentally. But you know, he was a showman in so many ways. And if you ever saw him MC an event, if you remember Jerry Turner's 25th anniversary, he had a natural comic timing, as we all know that. He had a grace and an elegance, and he could have been a wonderful actor as well.
But you know, many times people don't realize how difficult sometimes it is to do a newscast and how tight things can be. And Al always had a way of making it easy. It was easy to work with Al.
And when it wasn't, he would begin to break out with little beads of sweat on his forehead, and then he would take his script
The script.
and go like this. That was his trademark that we all loved and we'll all remember. We wanted to tell you a little bit about this set because although it's really beautiful, it's not just arbitrary. There are things on this set that really were Al's. Somebody, and I'm glad it wasn't me, walked into his office and took out some of the things, and gosh, if I can point them out, it's going to be unfair to the people with cameras here, but over in that corner there are a couple of candy jars because I had some, we used to like these hot balls. Now those are those things you know that you are like jawbreakers that are really hot. Right. Okay. Because I got in trouble with him one night saying that. We had them in these plastic containers, and so we started putting candy on our desk so people would come visit us every now and then. Those are the plastic containers, empty as you see from his desk. Next to it is a train light that I brought when I had to do this series on yard sales. Remember that, Bob? I gave you some teddy bear, and I gave him that train light. I thought he was going to hate it. I thought he'd say, what is this? He loved it because he liked train things. Down the way, there's a sign that someone made him and sent him saying Al Sanders, they carved his name. 2 shelves up, there's a little train that says Al. People were always sending him things having to do with trains and with his name on it and things. And this was, you know, this was through the years they would do it just because they liked him and they loved him and they knew he loved trains so much. And that's why we have trains all over here. And, you know, they were talking this morning about where Al got his love for trains, and he told me that when he was a kid in St. Louis, if this isn't true, well, gosh, this is what he told me. When he was a kid in St. Louis, he said from his house, he could hear the train whistle every night. And he used to lay there in bed and imagine where those trains were going and dream of leaving St. Louis and going to the big cities and the big time and getting out and exploring the world and that. And it was a big fantasy of his one day to get on one of those trains and really ride somewhere, you know, and go somewhere wonderful. And I think that's what he told me where it all developed. And the mystery and the magic of trains for him had to do with building a whole new life than the one he was living in. Not that he didn't have a happy childhood, he did indeed. He had loving parents, he was an only child, as we've talked about today in other contexts. And just for those who don't know a lot about Al, he, I guess you'd say he came from simpler means than he grew to.
I remember when we were doing the Christmas promos too, the holiday promos, you were saying, yeah, didn't you live in a 1-bedroom apartment, Al? And he goes, no, it was a 1-room apartment.
Yeah. 1 room.
Which wasn't, you know, I don't know if that's entirely true, but he did come from very simple means. And he got his love for broadcasting. He told me when he was a kid, his parents would have parties, and he'd spin the records. And they'd go, oh, yeah, and he'd beg them to do it. And he'd go in the room, and he'd start spinning records, and that's how, and he'd announce them, you know, now we're going to hear from whatever. That's how he decided he wanted to go into broadcasting, because he loved music so much, and he loved, you know, sort of entertaining the crowd.
Imagine what wonderful people his parents must have been.
Oh, they must have been.
To have been of modest circumstances. His father was a postman, was that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
But to raise a child that would grow up to be a man as wealthy in the currency of kindness as this gentleman was, surely these must have been extraordinary.
Yeah. And his
people.
grandmother, he loved his grandmother, he said. She spoiled him rotten.
You can see how well it's been passed on to his children.
Oh,
you heard
yes.
the children today talking about their father. And that must have been so difficult. And they did it with the class and the style that Al would have.
He would have been so proud.
Right.
He was smiling down from somewhere.